Wembley. Here in the corner of a regular industrial estate and residing in the shadow of our national stadium lives a quiet cultural icon. The Wembley Park Studios have been home to countless hours of film and television production since the early 20th century. I'm Ray Turner, and I've had a long connection with this building. I've been working at these studios, man and boy, as a warm-up artist for over 20 years. And some of my best memories in television have taken place right here. From James Mason to Richard Attenborough, Kurt Cobain to Simon Cowell and countless others. These studios have had the greats of music, the arts and entertainment through their doors over the past century, produced moments that have entertained generations.
Let's play.
Were home to some of the earliest film and television productions.
It was the site of the first purpose-built sound studio in the United Kingdom.
Ronnie Corbett, this is your life.
This whole house is a part of London society.
Right through to modern-day programming that is watched around the world.
This studio is famous now for its live shows.
Diversity! It's the X Factor judges!
And now with the site under threat from redevelopment, the time feels right to pay tribute to this iconic complex.
This was the biggest fully equipped television studio in the country.
But if we're talking studios, then, this was the place to be.
I'll be finding out why this building is so distinctive.
These studios today, I still think are exceptional and unique.
Rediscovering a whole world of lost archive. It's shots of the actual building being built. And we'll hear from those who still come here to make television today.
The studio was vast. It was just this vast arena.
One of the brilliant things is the atmosphere within the studios and how easy that makes it for us to do the job that we do.
I do believe the company is a centre of excellence.
I genuinely feel upset thinking about it closing because it's brought together great people.
You've made something ordinary amazing.
Some weeks you couldn't believe this could be transmitted on live television.
There are a lot to do with my own success of my own career, and I'm very grateful.
It will always have a warm place in my heart because it's a place that means a great deal.
So join me to celebrate nearly 100 years of celebrities, shows and heartwarming moments as we tell the story of Wembley Park Studios. If you switched on a TV in the early 1950s, you could only watch the BBC's television service. However, a commercial revolution was on the horizon, and in 1955, independent television was launched.
The whole idea of commercial television in those days would reflect the region that it was functioning in. For example, the West Country would have a farming programme, but you wouldn't see one in London.
ITV had an interesting start in that it was great political arguments going on about whether or not we should ever have it at all. But it did finally arrive, and ITV started on September 22nd, 1955.
Tonight, we add another sentence to the long history of London. Last year, after much argument, the Independent Television Act was passed by both Houses of Parliament. A new public service is about to be launched over the rooftops of old London.
ITV was to be operated by a different company in each region of the UK. In London, this task was split between two companies, one to produce weekday programming and the other weekend programming. Associated Rediffusion were contracted for the weekday schedule. They purchased an old film studio site in Wembley and quickly converted it into television studios.
Associated Rediffusion got the franchise and they were desperately looking for somewhere to make television programmes. So Wembley Studios at that time was closed. So they took it over. I believe it only took them about 6 months to convert them into proper TV studios.
Wembley played a very significant part, being one of the very first big ITV studios in the country.
So at that point there were two stages, one of which was divided down the middle and control rooms were built in that, making two TV studios, and the other one, control rooms were put down the side, and then it was divided into a very small studio and a slightly larger one. So they ended up with 4 studios.
The first live programme to hit ITV was a kiddies programme called Johnny and Flonny. That came out of Studio 3 here.
It's a treasure.
In the early days, they used Wembley to produce a variety of light entertainment and drama.
Elizabeth, go to your room. But, Father, about
Robin! I cannot talk now about your paltry concerns. Don't you realise I am about a work of science, a work that may change the world?
The shows I did here, I always remember Stars and Garters, because along with a friend of mine, we were the featured extras. So we were the regulars in the pub.
Well, Stars and Garters was extremely popular for Associated Rediffusion. But then, so were a lot of its other shows. Don't forget Michael Miles' Take Your Pick.
And now each of our competitors has a chance of winning 5 shillings from me if they can stand up to a battery of questions in the yes-no interlude. How long have you been a bus inspector?
13 years.
Have you? What were you doing before that? A conductor?
A bus driver.
A driver?
Yes.
Yeah! Bad luck, bad luck.
I found Harrison, sir. He's injured. And John Clint's got away.
Comedy shows like At Last the 1948 show that led on to Monty Python and The Goodies.
At last, the 1948 show.
Do you remember the way you never used to know which bar you were going to later that evening? I always used to find you, though, didn't I? Do you remember that time I found you crouched under the table in that bar, and you said you were hiding there from some terrible little boy with a peculiar voice?
The board of Rediffusion realised that actually none of the studios was quite big enough to do what they wanted to do.
By the late 1950s, it was clear that Wembley didn't offer a large enough studio to produce the big shows the network were requesting.
In particular, that scene where you have the fire engine, you know, and the ladder goes up. Well, I'm afraid you've got to lose that.
Well, Don, you can't cut that. I mean, the whole story depends on the fire engine ladder sequence. You might as well cut the whole thing.
I know, but you see, the point is, we simply haven't got enough room in Studio 2.
Plans for a new, larger studio were submitted to the management board. It was in 1958 that planning was granted for this very studio to be built. Studio 5, as it was known then, became the largest television production space in Europe at a huge 14,000 square feet. And today, it is still the biggest television studio in the United Kingdom. Building began on Studio 5 in December 1958. Sir Ivan Kirkpatrick, chairman of the Independent Television Authority, laid the foundation stone in 1959, and the studio was officially opened for production on the 9th of June 1960.
14,000 square feet of floor space. It's not just bigness for the sake of bigness. With more space for sets and camera movement, television can do more and more what only the cinema could do before.
Well, I think Studio 5 was built because you did need more space to make the programmes which Associated Rediffusion were doing. It made life a lot easier for everybody. And I think the prestige involved, having built the largest studio in Europe, was very good for Associated Rediffusion.
Rediffusion boasted of the studios where we are now of being the largest television studios in Europe. And there was a sense of something special.
For the opening night, a spectacular production was staged. An Arabian Night starred Orson Welles, had a cast of 300 and featured numerous animals, including horses, camels and an elephant. It was extremely ambitious, even by today's standards.
This is the biggest studio in Europe. How do we prove that to you? Well, there was one thought that you shoved a massive big drama in it, one called An Arabian Night.
Here is Associated Rediffusion's new Studio 5. When tonight's show, An Arabian Night, goes on the air in about an hour from now, it'll be in use for the first time.
It involved a huge cast and loads of animals. This 3 hours live went out from this studio with a huge live orchestra and all sorts of stuff going on. Incredibly ambitious. That certainly, enabled the studio to make its mark.
The scenery's in and the lighting boys are ready to light the sets.
John, I want to set the Caliph's Palace. Would you put the lights up to 10K?
And drop 65 down on check to 7.5.
There's room for even more lights than this, for Studio 5 has been planned looking forward to the day when colour television arrives.
I was the senior cameraman on An Arabian Night. We had 7 or 8 cameras on it. It was directed by a lovely man called Mark Lawton from the very posh Control Gallery, which was the first time that was ever used, obviously.
On the last line, I want them to look at camera.
Into which camera? 1 or 2?
Number 1, please.
It was a very big, successful show by any terms. And I think the next day they whipped it all out, put something else in, and Studio 5 was born.
We hope the day isn't so far off when programs like An Arabian Night will be able to take full advantage of all the facilities that Studio 5 can offer.
When Associated Rediffusion built Studio 5, they were very forward-thinking. While still being the biggest studio in the UK to this very day, it also has a rather unusual design feature. This massive space is actually built as two medium-sized studios that are separated by a massive soundproof wall that can be raised to create the large studio that I'm stood in now. Associated Rediffusion did this so that when large shows weren't being produced, the wall could be lowered and two medium-sized shows could be produced simultaneously.
I mean, the brilliant part of the design of this studio, and it is quite unique, is this huge door which goes the full width of the studio and 30 feet up.
It's two separate walls, both go up and down. They can go up and down independently of each other. You can just drop one wall and leave the other one up, or drop both doors to the floor and you've got that soundproofing to have two shows going on at the same time.
In either of these studios, you could be having live music, and if you've got an interview or a discussion program going on in the other one, you can't afford to hear the music going through the wall.
It's two separate buildings with a small divide running down the middle of it, so when the wall is dropped, there's no vibration going from one studio to the other.
And the motors which lift this enormously heavy structure, as I understand it, they looked around to find some motors that were powerful enough to lift the door. And the only ones they could find were the ones that were being built at that time for warships, for rotating the gun turrets on warships. So apparently that's what's up there, warship gun turret motors. So it's quite unique, and it's a very, very clever design.
We only had one instance that I can remember where there was the dreaded cry, "The door's stuck!" And we knew we had a production in the next day in both studios. So it was, okay, how are we going to do this? And Jim, who was, as we called him, head of Bogs and Boilers and the door, got it down. A truly unique feature in a TV studio and quite defining for this place.
Today, these are the only remaining studios on the site. But during Rediffusion's era, there were up to 6 studios operating at any one time here at Wembley. The land next door, now home to a small retail park, is where these other studios once stood.
Well, I'm now on the roof of the existing studio buildings. I'm looking at a photograph of what the site used to look like. Now, that is Studio 1 and Studio 2 next to it. Those studios being responsible for most of ITV's original drama and light entertainment output. But of course, they aren't there anymore because McDonald's and Lidl and Maplin's are there. They are where the studios used to be. Maplin's in particular has laid claim to be on the site of Studio 3, which transmitted the very first daytime children's program on the very first day of transmission. And of course, dwarfing everything around it, the only studio left, Studio 5. Back in the 50s and the 60s, this site was so much bigger. More studios, technical areas, and space.
With the arrival of Studio 5, Rediffusion started producing programs that made use of the huge space on offer.
I've got a great memory of the site. I was on the floor, I was a trainee assistant floor manager. I remember coming over here when I think it was called Hippodrome. Big shows, circus acts and all sorts of stuff.
From London, Hippodrome, with this week's host, Jimmy Dean.
Each of these shows was introduced by a big American star. There'd be something like Dusty Springfield and some other famous singer. And in between those acts, there would be performing lions. And then there'd be, you know, tightrope walkers and things.
They say to stay at the top in show business is the roughest thing. Here's some folks that have been right on top. Well, they've been hanging around up there for a long time. The Flying Leotaries. Here they are.
So that was a show that could not be done in any other studio, but that really, you know, made its mark here.
In the 60s, Studio 5 started to host Ready, Steady, Go, welcoming stars including Jimi Hendrix, the Rolling Stones and the Beatles.
George, can we hear your latest record now, please?
No. Yes, certainly, you can hear it, and it's called Can't Buy Me Love, and on Parlophone, and it's 6 and 9.
I don't care too much for money can't buy me love.
Certainly in my time, I do remember lots of big stars. Bing Crosby, Shirley Bassey, Rolling Stones. You name them, they were here, really, during that period.
Naturally, when news of the studio sale came through, the team here started to think of ways that the site's amazing history could be preserved. They found that simply by speaking to people that all sorts of amazing material started to unearth itself that related directly back to this very building. Over the following months, packages started arriving from all over the world. So this item here actually came from Canada. It was sent to us by a chap called Pip Wedge. This is the program we spoke about, the opening of Studio 5, An Arabian Night, with none other than the late great Orson Welles, which, as we said, featured a cast of 300 and live animals in this very studio. And this is the actual theme track, Arabian Night. Look at that, perfect condition. Here's another interesting piece. I find this amazing because it's shots of the actual building being built and the studio where they were putting the divider in, which makes it into two separate studios. There's a couple of interesting photographs here. I'm sure you're going to recognize a lot of these people. This was from the television's version of Rocket to the Moon. It's the cast here with John Malkovich, Ian McShane, and of course Connie Booth, who was of course married to John Cleese. Now, what about this? This is the Broadcast Award, and this was given to Fountain Studios in 1999 for the best studio facilities. There's so much stuff here which was kindly donated by people, as I said, from all around the world, which people here have researched and found. This is now being donated to the BFI, the British Film Institute, and rightly so. So television had arrived in Wembley during the 1950s, but the original studios on this site were built for film production back in the 1920s.
The most important event, probably in the entire history of Wembley, is the British Empire exhibition of 1924-5. It was an enormous event and very, very popular at the time. It was intended to make the public more aware of the empire. All the buildings became derelict after the closure of the exhibition. The fine dining restaurant of the British Empire exhibition was purchased with the purpose of making it a film studio in 1927. And in fact, if you look at the entrance to the studios building, there are two lion heads, and those were the lion heads at the entrance of the exhibition gardens. It was the site of the first purpose-built sound studio in the United Kingdom.
The first films made in Wembley in the late 1920s were The Crimson Circle and Dark Red Roses, both using the new medium of sound.
When we found out that the studio was to close down, I started to look into the film days. So you had Alexander Korda, who made The Wedding Rehearsal here, which starred Merle Oberon, who went on to star as Kathy in the 1939 version of Wuthering Heights.
In 1932, the studio was taken over by Fox Films, who later went on to become 20th Century Fox. A number of well-known British actors performed in these studios, including James Mason, Jessica Tandy, Jack Hawkins, Rex Harrison, and George Sanders.
Even during the Second World War, the studios were put to good use, producing Army and RAF training films.
After the Army Kinema people during the war made their training films here, they began making films here again. And The Ship That Died of Shame was made here, and that was Richard Attenborough in about 1954.
That's a silly thing to play with.
Put it away, you fool. He's going to run us in.
That's right.
So we're going to kill him. To give us a chance. To give us a chance, you see.
The studios closed down in 1955 and were taken over by Associated Rediffusion, which was the independent television company that had been given the weekday franchise for the London area.
So the UK's first ever commercial television network had launched and was using Wembley's old film studios as its production base. However, 1968 saw major changes for both rediffusion and the studios.
In 1968, the ITV franchise was renewed. The upshot of it was that they ended up with a new company, London Weekend, and the existing two companies, Rediffusion and ABC, they merged and formed Thames Television, which was based at Teddington. Much to the disgruntlement of Rediffusion, they thought they were doing a wonderful job. London Weekend had to then start making programmes back in 1968, ready to go on air. Rediffusion were reluctant to sell the site, but in the end they did, and a lot of the Rediffusion staff stayed on and ended up working for the new London Weekend company.
We were leaving there on the Friday and we were starting with London Weekend on the Monday. It was a good time to work in this industry, to be honest with you. One day you'd be working on a ballet. The next day you'd be working on a political programme. There was so much variety.
LWT planned to construct new studios on London's South Bank, so only moved into Wembley temporarily. However, they used the studios to launch a raft of shows that are still popular to this day. Upstairs, Downstairs, Please Sir and On the Buses all started their lives here.
London Weekend were hoping to start colour TV, and we were doing a series called Upstairs, Downstairs, which was a massive show in those days.
And we feel that this whole house, is a part of London society.
The problem with changing to colour was that obviously for us as crew, we were going to expect to do a lot more rigging, a lot more heat in the studios, more glare in your eyes, whatever way you wanted to go. So obviously we asked for more money. London Weekend decided that that wasn't going to happen. So the first, I think, 6 or 7 episodes of Upstairs, Downstairs were all shot in black and white until there was a shift by them to actually think, well, actually, these guys are probably right. We probably do need to give them a little bit more money, and that's what happened. And so we then were quite happy to work in colour.
A little less spit in your higher register, if you please, Dingley. We don't want to shower the visitors on open day.
Blimey, it's Ivy Benson.
On the Buses was great because these studios, the door height is such that you can get a double-decker bus in here. So they could do all the opening titles with a bus driving round in here. The sets they could build big enough. The depot could be built here.
Kiss the spanner.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can tighten up the nut on the bolt.
Dad! You've cracked the basin!
Arthur, see if you can fish that spanner out.
You what? You drop it and you fish it out.
Well, you...
Sir David Frost was an influential character at London Weekend. As well as helping to establish the company, he and his writers made many shows for ITV out of Wembley.
We crossed over here to ITV and London Weekend and everything, and the two Ronnies and John Cleese were in those shows. I look back on this very warmly because the atmosphere, live television, Frosty loved that.
Hello, good evening, and welcome, and a very happy Easter from Mr. Ronnie Barker, Mr. Ronnie Corbett, and me.
The atmosphere was amazing. You felt it when you walked in to the building, these studios. A buzz in the air. It was a great era, that. I'd casually mention to somebody, say we're in Studio 5 at Wembley. Oh, it's sort of like a palladium of studios. People who'd never been in here knew about it. I can't think of any one studio that had that sort of reputation. Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett were going to appear in a This Is Your Life sketch.
Oh, George, make yourself useful. Open this tin of fish paste for me.
Eamon Andrews ain't in the room, is he?
No, Eamon Andrews is not in this room. He is not in this house, nor in this street even. And for the last time, he does not want you on This Is Your Life.
They did the sketch, and it wasn't that funny. It was just there to serve a purpose. And then Eamon Andrews walked on.
The beginning of that was fiction, but the next bit is fact. Because Ronnie Corbett, this is your life.
Ronnie's face was a picture. Oh, it was a great moment, that.
So in 1972, London Weekend left, and the studios remained empty for a few years. Then the Lee brothers took them over. Now, Lee, they were a couple of gentlemen who ran a lighting hire company, which provided lighting for the film industry.
Benny Lee and myself were coming back from Elstree, and there was a sign outside, like, for sale. And Benny said, "Has nobody bought that yet?" He said, "Turn round." And so we come down Fulton Road here, so we pulled up and we come through the back. These are the first two studios that we came in. It was all dark, and we're looking around saying, "God, look at the height." And he's on the phone straight away. I think that was 77. We bought it by the end of the year, and then we moved in.
During the Lee days, for me, that's when I wish I'd been here, because that would have been a magical period for me. Because you'd have films like Elephant Man here, you know, that amazing story of that Victorian doctor, Frederick Treves, finding this man on a fairground. He's horribly disfigured, and then only to find out that there's a beautiful soul inside.
When Lee took it over, it was still a television studio, but they didn't want any of this strange television stuff in it. So all of that was removed. All of the old lighting hoists were removed. All the equipment from the control rooms was removed, and they renumbered all the stages.
Lee changed the name of the colossal Studio 5 to Stage A and Stage B. Incidentally, the names that are still used at the studios today. The older parts of the site were returned to their original use as film stages.
I'd like to have seen bits of Empire Strikes Back as well. Parts of that were shot here during the Lee days. And there are lots of other films like Quadrophenia, so you would have had the Who walking around, and Sting, and all the wonderful cast on that film.
It's been an unbelievable place, the artists that have come through this door.
And it was continuously busy. Straight after Corners Green, we were into Quadrophenia, then we were into The Professionals, then we were into The Awakening with Charlton Heston, and it was one after another.
The reason it worked for us, the TV studios, because we had Lee lighting here, we had Lee filters here, we had a camera operation here, and it was the base.
Brazil, to think that Robert De Niro would have been here, that would have been fascinating to see. Yentl, where Barbara Streisand made a directorial debut, which was just wonderful. And then she just went on to be like the biggest selling female singer in the world.
Unfortunately, this studio couldn't exist on the income of the studio alone, because the other companies have moved out because they were expanded.
We eventually left the studio here in June 1989. Through those 10 years, from what I can remember, we're up to about 35 big feature films.
They must have been days that were as magical as those talkies. You know, some of the people in the talkies who went on to be massive Hollywood stars. Just great.
Lee left completely in 1989, making way for the studio's next occupant, Limehouse Television.
Back in 1982, Channel 4 was launched. Channel 4 was at the time unique in that it was a TV company that had no studios or facilities of its own. So a lot of independent production companies started to be set up, but of course they needed somewhere where they could make the programmes. And so Limehouse TV was created.
As part of a regeneration programme, a site in London's Docklands was chosen as the base for the new Limehouse studios.
Limehouse had been very successful, but had run into some financial difficulties and were bought out by Trillian plc. Within a few months of Trillian owning the Limehouse business, they were approached to sell, and the Canary Wharf Tower was built on that very site. It was a very shrewd purchase by Trillian at the time, but obviously then meant that they had to decide what they were going to do with the business, and they chose to continue it and start looking for new premises.
Limehouse was left in the doldrums for a bit, and they took over a studio at the Trocadero to carry on with a few little shows there. But then they decided they would move in here. So this then became the new Limehouse.
Purchasing the Wembley site gave Limehouse a lot of refurbishment work to do. They decided against upgrading the old film stages, and most of them were demolished. They focused on turning Studio 5 back into a fully equipped television studio once again.
As the studios had been used for film, the television studio aspects of it had been well and truly destroyed. Like the studio floor, in film, they have wooden floors and they nail stuff to the floor, which resulted in the TV floor being totally destroyed. So one of the things that had to be done was to relay the complete TV floor again. There was no fixed lighting, so a fixed lighting grid, saturated lighting grid had to go in. There were no control rooms, so control rooms had to be built. Almost everything had to be replaced, apart from the structure of the building.
I do remember turning up here and thinking, this is a building site still. But it was remarkable how quickly things were turned round and a studio started to emerge.
By late 1989, the studios were nearing completion and Limehouse started attracting programme makers.
Although the Docklands premises closed in March 1989, Limehouse has opened 2 even bigger studios, this time in Wembley, where they continue to attract superstars. The building consists of 2 6,500 square foot studios, which can, at the touch of a button, be turned into a massive 13,000 square foot single studio, probably the largest fully equipped television stage in Europe.
We were very fortunate because we did work on a huge variety of shows here at Wembley in the Limehouse era. We had some just gloriously enjoyable shows like Food and Drink, which was a lovely food magazine programme with wonderful presenters who were so professional. It was a classic BBC production, really.
The question I'm most often asked is, can you recommend something astonishingly cheap? Well, we're doing our best. Oz and I are tasting our way through all the cheapest offerings in the high street.
It's going very well indeed. The wines are far, far better than they were 2 or 3 years ago.
You better have your pad and pencil ready, after all, in case we make some recommendations later on.
Another thing that was very good was the start of Hat-Trick Productions, and they were a very firm believer in Limehouse, and they brought a lot of their productions here. And we did a number of series of Whose Line Is It Anyway, shows with Harry Enfield, Paul Merton, and of course the one that is still going and I believe is in its 50th series was Have I Got News For You? And the pilot was shot in the Wembley studios, and then subsequently the first probably 7 or 8 series were shot here as well.
This week, 2 teams of witty and politically astute celebrities couldn't make it, so we've got this lot here instead.
Most of the shows were coming back on a regular basis. The Word was a good one because it was high profile, maybe not for the right reasons, but it was very high profile.
Spread the word.
Particular memories of the now infamous The Word. It was different, it was new, and it certainly caused a lot of interest. And to actually be involved in it, on camera, with it all going on around you, was absolutely brilliant.
The Word.
The Word was anarchic, fresh and exciting, and you really didn't know what was going to be happening. And it was the most incredible experience to do it. I loved it. You would have Nirvana and all kinds of really fantastic music policy. And of course, the music at that point was booked by Joe Wiley.
Next week, we've got quite a bit of music on, Black Sheep, Tesla and Extreme. Meanwhile, here's Nirvana, kicking it up good style.
When Kurt stood up and professed that Courtney was the most fabulous in the world.
Courtney Love, the lead singer of the sensational pop group Hole, is the best in the world.
And we were all sitting in the gallery looking at each other going, OK, just get on with the music now, please. But of course, they were all playing live. That was the other brilliant thing about it. You had no way. You couldn't just hit a button and the track would come on. They were playing live. So they took their time. They said what they wanted, and he certainly said what he wanted. And then they gave a fantastic performance. I mean, it was the only performance they did, I think, on television in the UK. And nowadays, if that happened, it would be all over the place, it would be everywhere. But then it just went out and it was gone. So that was a bit of a shocker.
The people who owned Trillion managed Queen, the group. So I worked on many of the videos for Queen. So it was with great news that we heard they were coming to studio to shoot a video. And just before they turned up, there was lots of things about, oh, we need a dressing room with a bed in it for Freddie to lie down in, things like this, which sounded a little bit strange at the time. Freddie didn't look too well, as we all know, but at the time we, didn't really think about it. And it wasn't until a few weeks later, and driving to work, we'd heard that Freddie had died. So it was with great shame to hear that, but it was also great to be involved in his last one as well, last video.
In 1992, Limehouse unfortunately went bust, or at least they didn't go bust, their parent company went bust.
It was late 1992, and halfway through recording, the men in suits turned up, and we found out that Trillion had gone into receivership, so they chose to make everybody redundant. The receivers did keep me on. Thankfully, they didn't make me redundant, because they needed somebody who knew the studios to help sell it. So for the next 5 months, it turned out to be in the end, I was here showing prospective buyers around, explaining what the studios were about.
So financial difficulties at Limehouse's parent company meant they had no choice but to cease trading in 1992, meaning once again Wembley was up for sale. The site attracted the attention of many potential buyers, but it was the owners of a small independent studio from New Malden in Surrey who felt ready for a new challenge and thought they could make a success of these studios.
When I heard that it was likely to be Fountain that were going to be the successful purchasers, I was somewhat relieved that it was going to be kept as a studio. They came back for repeat visits, and I got to know them a bit better. It became obvious to me that they were treating this as a very serious venture. I wasn't too sure exactly what role they were expecting me to play, but it soon became apparent that I was going to be one of the boys.
When Fountain started in 1985 in New Malden, it was probably the first self-contained building where people could shoot and edit and make a programme all in one go. The development of Wembley came about because New Malden was too small for what it needed. And then all of a sudden, Wembley came on the market. The decision was taken that we would buy Wembley rather than try and extend New Malden.
The land next to Studio 5, where the old film stages once stood, was sold off and a small retail park was built. As for the remaining buildings, Fountain had a lot of work to do before their first production.
The story goes that when the studio closed, a lot of the equipment was then removed and sold on. So the studios were left completely gutted in a pretty rough old state.
Limehouse closed in '92, and literally people just left the building.
Yes.
And it was left for Fountain to find the remnants of it a few months later.
I turned up. I was only here for 2 weeks originally, and the place looked like a small bomb had dropped into it. There was cable everywhere.
We got around to rewiring the total studio. There were stacks of cables that was 6, 7, 8 foot high in the air. We sat down and did a calculation after that, and we worked out we had used something like 26 miles of video cable, audio cable, time code, and so on and so forth.
By late '93, the refurbishment was complete and Fountain welcomed their first show, comedy satire series, The Day to Day.
Welcome. The Bank of England is in chaos following the discovery that the pound has been stolen.
Interesting doing that show. Very interesting. It was really good to work with Armando Iannucci, who was writing that particular show.
Time now for business with Calately Sisters.
Thanks, Chris.
Take her off the monitor. I don't want to see her face.
And no let up today for British manufacturers. There were large profit slumps for Securivag and United HaHa, down 6.4, joining Collins Perhaps units on a lower third rung.
During the 1990s, we hosted a very wide range of shows, turning around 4 or 5 shows a week because they were smaller and we were doing overnights.
So when I was here at Fountain, I call it the heyday because it really was back-to-back productions. A lot of regular clients would come in, a lot of returning productions. So they all got to know us really well, and everybody would know us by first name basis. But this really great feeling of, you know, people coming back here and feeling like they're just coming home.
Fountain's purchase of Wembley's huge studio soon started to pay off as shows such as Hearts of Gold, Talking Telephone Numbers and Commercial Breakdown started to use the facilities.
Carrots Commercial Breakdown.
Welcome to Carrots Commercial Breakdown, a collection of some of the best TV ads from around the world. The first programme I did there was Commercial Breakdown, and that's when we had those really big sets with giant tubes of toothpaste and soap and God knows what, and I was this tiny figure. Have you seen UK Gold? I mean, you have to pay for this stuff. 24 hours of recycled repeats. The weather forecasts are crap. Fountain was a great place to work. I always remember it being a very friendly place, and it was genuinely a friendly place, and I was always made so welcome.
Very quickly, Fountain started to establish regular clients, with production companies bringing show after show to the old Studio 5.
My producer-director from London Weekend, a guy called Paul Smith, ran a company called Celador, which I was a shareholder of. And Celador's production company used to use Fountain a lot. We did Winning Lines and Talking Telephone Numbers. So the connection with Fountain and Celador was very strong. And Celador went on to be sort of successful until we did a show called originally Cash Mountain. And it was changed to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
We did the first ever Millionaire there. And I mean, I still remember that night. I don't think I realised then just how big Millionaire was about to become.
For the first time on UK TV, we have a top prize available of £1 million, and it could be won here tonight.
You know, we had no comprehension it was going to go to 120 countries around the world and all this stuff, and the, you know, Oscar-winning movie and all that stuff. And it changed game shows forever, really. It was just, you know, beyond anybody's comprehension.
Everybody said the same thing. Quiz show, dead in the water. Nobody wants to know quiz shows. It took us 3 years to get on to television.
I thought we'd get 3 good years, and actually it changed my life forever.
It broke the mold of quiz shows because suddenly you had a quiz show that was drama.
Let's play.
There were people making these life-changing decisions in front of your eyes.
Basically frighten people, you know, like make it really dark and kind of, you know, it's £1 million, so they should have to work hard.
You've used up your 50-50. You can still phone a friend. You could still ask the audience. Whatever happens, you leave here with £32,000. If you get this right, you win £125,000.
And I do remember after the first one, and a guy wound his window down, a big guy in a truck, and he went, "Hey, Chrissy, phone a friend." And I thought, that's only ever been out once, that show.
I'm going to take the money. Quiz, just there.
I have to say, I don't blame him at all. This gives me so much pleasure to give you a cheque for £64,000.
And of course, when we started to make Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, really, Fountain was the obvious choice, you know, because Paul was very well ensconced there, all the writers knew it, everybody felt very comfortable.
We were all part of this great adventure, this show just going through the roof. So yeah, very good times at Fountain. They looked after us and we were very happy.
It is still the most popular game show ever devised in the world.
Many other homegrown entertainment and comedy series started their lives at Fountain.
My whole memory, really, surrounding Fountain Studios and being here just comes to me through being friends of Sanjeev Bhaskar and Meera Syal. One day I got a call and he literally said to me, "Can you do me a favour?" He said, "We've got this pilot for a new show. It's just really low key." So I said, "Is it going to be an audience?" No, just you know, we just want to see how it goes. Famous last words. So I said, "You're going to have to give me something, you know, I've got to prep something." And he said, "Well, it's a sort of family environment, it's a house environment, and all you have to do is knock on a front door."
Hello, Lisa. Hello, Sanjeev.
See you on the right placement.
Yo, yes, definitely.
And what transpired after that? I literally thought, have I landed on Planet Zog?
Oh, right. Cozy.
People were coming up and literally pawing my coat and like snuggling up to me. And of course, I had no idea it was Mira because she was so amazingly made up as this old lady.
I told him
We've run out of paper in the guest toilet.
Dad, could you please...
Pop up from?
close the hatch, please.
Yeah.
Then all the food kept coming at me whilst this bizarre interview was taking place. And it was only afterwards that it dawned on me that we were there merely to be stooges. When you're eating the biscuit and drinking the tea, you're looking really silly on camera. God, it was clever.
Do you like the waterfall?
Oh, that's a really nice addition.
You see, she likes the waterfall.
Afterwards, they invited us for drinks, and there was a woman I think I vaguely recognised, and I went up to her and I said, "Goodness me, you're not Mary." And she looked at me, she went, "Lisa." And it was my best friend from school when I was 16, doing my A-levels. It was his mum, who was a set designer. And after all those years, that evening, that pilot got me back in touch with my best mate from school in South London.
As Fountain started using Wembley for more significant programmes, they started to make their mark as a major player in the studio market. This is a testament to the teams that have operated the company for over 3 decades.
The ethos and the culture hasn't changed. It's always been a can-do, anything to help the client organisation, and that is a tribute to Julian Kosick, who was the first managing director.
Julian had a great deal of common sense and employed Mariana. And between the two of them, they kept together a group of people who made this a really intimate place to work.
What's great about this place is that it has a small but dedicated staff, very enthusiastic, and arguably the most successful period has been the last few years with Fountain running it.
A lot of faces have remained over the sort of 20-odd years that Fountain's been going. A lot of the same people have been here, the key linchpin people have remained, and they've kept that ethos going, they've passed that on, and that sense of care and duty of care, and that doesn't happen in a lot of places.
My personal ambition has been for it to always be the best, to do as well as it possibly can, and to make sure that the team are well looked after.
In 1999, Fountain won broadcast accolade for the best studio facility, going on to become the company to operate the studios for the longest period of time. And arguably, it's Fountain who have used the studio's vast size to the greatest potential, truly becoming the home of many Saturday night light entertainment staples.
I think their clever ambition was to offer the unique facility of this huge space. And they were really the first company that saw the potential of that and saw that if you turned this into one great big studio, you could make programmes here that simply couldn't be made anywhere else.
Things started to happen where shows got bigger and bigger. I was working for Talent TV, and we'd just picked up this format from Holland called Test the Nation, and had been to the BBC and got it commissioned. But we needed a really big studio. At the time, we stretched the facilities and resources here to the absolute limit. You can imagine this place, even with the size of the studio, was just heaving. Not only was it the first live interactive show on Saturday night prime time, I mean, it really was a groundbreaking in terms of both its scale and the ability to link up the audience at home with a live show coming to you from a big studio.
This studio is famous now for its live shows, and that's really quite something. On camera, this studio looks huge. It has enabled programme makers to come up with ambitious ideas, because you can really make a programme that gives the impression of importance and grandeur, and you know, this is an important show. This is the show you should be watching.
The shows I look after at Fountain these last few years have been The X Factor and Britain's Got Talent. Prior to that, Pop Idol, which we did here for a couple of years. What's really good about being here is when you move in, you take over the whole site. So you kind of feel as though it's your studio for the time that you're here, and that's really attractive to us and has been for some time.
The very first TV show I made was at Fountain Studios. And
I don't think I've been into many TV studios. Well, not ones like this. I remember walking in here for the first time and seeing the Pop Idol set. And I stopped dead in my track and I said, this is magic. And that's what this studio has done for so many shows and our shows. Made something ordinary amazing.
It's the Britain's Got Talent judges!
The winner is Paul Potts, George Sampson, Diversity, Spellbound, Kyle McDowell, Ashley Appleton, Attraction, Collabro, Jules Antoine Matisse, Richard Jones. A big thank you to everybody here at Fountain Studios for the last 10 years. Thanks, guys.
It started to make its mark in the way that the original designers back in the Rediffusion days probably never imagined. But yeah, thank goodness it was here, because then we ended up with shows like The X Factor. It's made a huge impact on British television.
From London, this is The X Factor. Please welcome your host, Dermot O'Leary.
The first show I was involved in Fountain was the first pilot I ever did, which is a show called Seaside Special. So that's why I've always had such a fondness and romance, I guess, about Fountain, because Fountain's a really weird place in that you look at it from the outside and it's nothing special. And yet, when you come inside, if you're a TV person, then it gets in your veins. So something about when you're rehearsing and the screen doors open and it's a Sunday morning and you've got your coffee in your hand and you see that break in light and you see all the guys outside, and there's something very addictive and mesmeric about that. And once that gets in your blood, it's very, very difficult to wean yourself off it.
I got a call late in the summer just saying, would you be interested in doing The X Factor? And so it's such a thrill to be here for these last weeks.
And new voiceover, go track.
It's a great show for this building because it has such ambition and it looks incredible.
And I was the first host of The Extra Factor. And what was magical about that time was that the scale of the show was extraordinary. So, that was Fountain at its best, really. Particularly live television, you need to have a lot of people that are bang on their game, that know what they're doing, that can deliver when they need to deliver. So if you're in front of the camera, you've got a lot of trust. You have to put a lot of trust in everybody. And that's always been implicit here.
It's the most ambitious show on television by far. What that show does every week is unbelievable. When that dock door opens, when we roll a VT, and in a minute and a half, we bring on these enormous set pieces or lighting structures or whatever it is, and then we come out of the clip and all of a sudden there's a whole new stage set look and a performance starting. People at home don't really realise that. I think people don't realise that that's all happened in a minute and a half. But it is amazing.
The expertise that have been built up here, both in technical quality, the willingness to go the extra mile, was now becoming well known, which is why you've had this amazing flow of work through these studios.
It's kind of like a family studio site, really. We've known a lot of the people here for many, many years, and they've always supported us a great deal.
The nicest people I've ever met work here, and we've made great friends over the years.
What's been amazing about being at Fountain is that we've had a life together working here. Some of my most memorable moments are the nights out that we had after a show finished. Go for a couple of drinks in the bar, we'd end up over the road at the wine bar, and then we'd probably go to the Wembley Tandoori. That was kind of a regular night out with a lot of the crew.
Young TV host, first time doing anything. It's a very, very intimidating atmosphere. And I remember this place being very warm and welcoming early doors, and that kind of stuff stays with you.
Things that stand out in one's mind over the years, I suppose if there was one moment I would relive time and time again, would be the Pop Idol final, that we had this kind of general election feeling at the end between Will and Gareth. And nobody knew who was going to win. There were a lot of fans for Will, there were a lot of fans for Gareth. We were all on tenterhooks wanting to know what the result was.
When I think of X Factor here, I think of Beyonce and Alexandra. I think it was the first time we probably had a bona fide worldwide superstar in Fountain that I can remember on the X Factor. And I remember that being an incredible moment.
One more time, everyone. Beyonce!
One other memorable moment will be on Dermot O'Leary's first year of presenting the show, and it was his first live show here, was when Sharon Osbourne left the set.
What I wasn't expecting my first week is for one judge to have 2 acts in the bottom 2.
It's both now out of your hands, all right? Everything rests on the decision of Louis, Sharon, Danny, and Simon.
And then she went, "Dermy, I ain't doing it," and just walked off.
Sharon has decided to leave the panel tonight.
In the show.
Sharon?
I'm out.
Okay. We'll get to that in a minute, Sharon, but at the moment, Sharon's refusing to vote.
A little part of you is going inside, Sharon Osbourne's just walked off your TV show on your first day. What have you done?
Sharon had 2 people in the bottom 2, and she stormed effing and blinding off the set. And I went down to see her in the middle of the commercial break, and we managed to convince her to go back on the desk, all in 4 minutes, 20 seconds.
The very last show to come live from the studios under Fountain was the X Factor semi-finals on the 4th of December 2016.
A dramatic and emotional night all around. Not least because this is tonight the very last show to come out of this television studio. Fountain Studios has been our home now for 13 years, and we have loved every single minute of it. So a massive thank you to all the staff and the crew behind the scenes who have made us feel so welcome. We're part of our weekend family.
I also want to say thank you to everybody who's worked at Fountain Studios. This is where we made our first shows. You have been amazing. And they're going to knock this place down. I can't believe it, but that's life, I guess. But I want to, once again, thank you so much. We're going to miss you.
To be hosting the last show that's going to be made here, for me, having started my career here, is quite fitting. And it's also a big honour for me to be doing the last show here, because it's a space that means a great deal.
ITV next Saturday. We will see you then. Thank you, Fountain. God bless and good night.
Being here and doing X Factor has been incredible. It's been a hell of a ride, and it's going to be a sad day when we walk out of here on the last show day.
It's easy to see that a fascinating history has unfolded here over nearly 100 years' worth of production. But soon that's to be brought to an end. It's always difficult to weigh up a business decision against an emotional one, and the subject of the sale of these studios has done just that.
The news of the closure came as a huge surprise. I think it's a real shame that a way hasn't been found to incorporate these studios into the redevelopment of the area. And that's the tragedy, really, of studios being owned by businessmen and not by people who are passionate about television.
I just think it's a huge shame that somewhere like this is going to be no more. And sometimes I think we've just got enough tower blocks of flats in London.
The lack of studio space in London is a real blow to the industry, I believe.
It made me very sad to hear the news of studios being sold, knowing it was an end of an era.
It's a theme that runs through the industry at the moment, I'm afraid, of places being knocked down. The likes of it will never be seen again.
Everybody here has been absolutely fantastic and will be sorely missed and fondly remembered.
I think the TV industry is going to miss dedicated television facilities. I'm obviously desperately sad. We are a victim of London land prices. The actual decision from a head office point of view, they're a public company, they had to do it.
They've got to preserve some memory of what went on here. That would be awful if they don't do that.
You know, studios were very important, but now everything is to do with cost.
It's an iconic building. That's what it is. The people and the history. It's going to be sad to see it go.
I genuinely feel upset thinking about it closing because it's brought together great people and I will miss the place.
Yeah, the closure of this studio, it'll impact the local area. They were quite pleased that they had this studio here that had been here since the days of Talkies, right up to the days of X Factor.
I think I owe Fountain a lot. They're a lot to do with my own success of my own career, and I'm very grateful.
Sad, but the reality is money always talks.
Okay, and I know it's a building, and I feel quite emotional about that. I will always have great memories, and they will live on. I'll always remember you guys. Thank you.
I think in a lot of places you go into, you are a job, if you like, and they just want to fill in the sheet and be done with you, and the show finishes and the set goes out and off you go. At Fountain, it's always felt like you are special and that you have been taken care of. And that's something I'm going to miss.
I feel like a part of me is still here in Fountain. You know, a lot of the things that are in the background which people never see.
It feels like it's part of the community, and if all we do is build houses on places, what does that say about us? If we don't do things, then where does that end? Fountain's a place I will always owe a great deal of gratitude to. It will always have a warm place in my heart.
It was a joy to work here, and we had a load of fun. And what's more, we were being paid for it.
I think the thing that we will miss most will be the people, because it's the people primarily that draws you back. I can't imagine that being replicated anywhere else, because there isn't anywhere else like it.
From the early films of the 1920s through the birth of independent television to modern-day production, watched around the world, these studios have stood throughout, but times change and things move on. Soon, these buildings will make way for a new chapter in the ever-changing London skyline. I, along with all the people you've heard from in this film, have had a happy, long, memorable connection with this building. And as my time working at this studio comes to an end, I think it's only fair that I leave the final word to the staff of this wonderful facility.
Fountain Studios is a company of people whose talents are about to be unleashed on the world, a lucky world.
This has always been my second home and will always be my second family.
Stunning shows, stacks of smiles, a shed load of slipway. It's been great.
Working at Fountain has been a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
My time at Fountain has been really enjoyable, and I'm so grateful to have worked with a great team of people.
It's been an absolutely fantastic and memorable 15 years.
I found my time at Fountain highly enlightening due to the massive cross-section of people that I've worked with.
It's unlike anywhere I've worked before. You soon become part of a huge family.
For me, Fountain is the sum of all its parts. The clients, the work we do, the people and the humour. And I'm really proud that I've been a part of it.
Too many memorable moments, which is probably a good thing, but it shows you how great it's been to work here. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed myself in this building.
I've ridden the Fountain roller coaster for 13 and a half years. There's been many ups, a few downs, but I'll miss the ride and I'll miss my fellow passengers.
The whole team here at Fountain are unique because we all feel like one big family, and that's what I'll miss.
My time here has been invaluable, learning from some of the biggest studio shows in the country.
It's more than just a studio, it's been such a unique place to work.
I feel working here actually gives you the opportunity without the bureaucracy to enjoy and actually achieve something at work.
When I started in the year 2000, it was a complete career change for me. I loved it that much, I stayed.
It's been unusual and it's been very surprising. I've truly loved every minute of it.
For me, I'll always remember what I was part of here at Fountain.
It's been a special place to work and grow up, and I've been part of something that I remember fondly for the rest of my life.
I'm very proud to be a part of the Fountain story and to have worked on some of the most iconic television shows of modern times.
Working at Fountain has just been unforgettable.
It's been a great place to start my career in television and has given me lots of opportunities, and I've also made some friends here that I'll keep for the rest of my life.
From my first day at Fountain Studios, I have always seen it as a dream factory, and I would like to think that my service here has helped make many dreams come true.
After nearly 16 years of working here, I'm going to miss everything about Fountain.
No matter the size of the show we've been making, it's always been done with a sense of dedication, level of responsibility and a sense of humour that I think makes us second to none. And it's what makes working here so enjoyable.
I joined Fountain at the age of 19, and this has become my childhood home.
My word to describe Fountain is family, because it is like a big happy family, and we welcome people into the family when they come to work here.
It's all about the team. Fountain has always been about the team.
(2017). Since the last programmes were recorded here in December, The entire contents of the studios have been sold off at auction, the building has been gutted, and Fountain Studios as a business has been wound down. As for the studios themselves, at the time of recording, it has now become apparent that Quintain, the property investment and development company who have purchased the site, have no plans to demolish the studio buildings immediately. With a lease on the site still available, it is possible that either a new temporary tenant will be found or that the studios will simply be left to fall into a state of disrepair. Also in February 2017, Historic England rejected a proposal to consider the main Studio 5 building for listed status, citing that although it has become a distinctive venue and landmark and is more than the simple factory-like box of many television studios, it is not a building of high architectural merit. Aside from the size of Studio 5 and its flexible use, it is essentially a functional building and does not have claims to structural innovation or to pioneering technology. As of March 2017, Quintain have started a public consultation on what they're calling the Fulton Quarter Master Plan. It includes suggestions to redevelop the studios and the adjacent retail park into a mixed-use landscape site, including residential and commercial spaces. These proposals stretch into the longer term with an estimated delivery in the next 10 to 15 years. Given these latest developments, it seems a shame that Fountain weren't able to continue their work for the interim years, especially considering the current squeeze on television studio space in London. However, with Quintain's appreciation that the site could still be used before it becomes part of their Wembley Park master plan, it's possible that we haven't yet told the final chapter of the story of Wembley Park Studios.